The bullied teen stood up for a new student, never realizing he was the son of the school's wealthiest donor. That single moment of courage would change everything for Ethan Parker, though he couldn't have known it then, not while his heart hammered against his ribs and his hands trembled at his sides. Ethan had only wanted to disappear into the peeling paint of the hallway wall. That's what he'd perfected over 3 years at Westlake High, the art of invisibility. But something about the scene unfolding before him that Monday morning had pierced through his carefully constructed shield of indifference. The new kid, lanky with unruly dark hair and clothes that somehow looked both expensive and carelessly thrown on, stood with his shoulders hunched as Tyler Reed and his friends circled him like sharks. Ethan recognized the familiar choreography of humiliation about to unfold. The new student clutched his schedule with white knuckles, eyes darting around for an escape that wouldn't come. "Nice shoes," Tyler sneered, his voice carrying down the crowded hallway. "What are those, designer? Daddy buy them for you?" The irony wasn't lost on Ethan. Tyler's own shoes were limited edition basketball sneakers that probably cost more than Ethan's entire wardrobe. But that was Tyler's way, identifying any difference, any vulnerability, and exploiting it mercilessly. The new kid mumbled something inaudible, trying to step around the growing circle of onlookers. Tyler's hand shot out, shoving the boy's shoulder hard enough to send him stumbling back against the lockers with a metallic bang. A textbook tumbled from the new kid's arms, papers scattering across the dirty linoleum floor. Laughter rippled through the gathering crowd. No one moved to help. No one ever did. Ethan felt a familiar tightness in his chest, the same constriction he felt whenever Tyler turned those cold eyes on him. For 2 years, Ethan had been Tyler's favorite target, until Tyler seemed to grow bored with his lack of reaction. Now Ethan was merely ignored, which was infinitely preferable to the alternative. He should walk away. That's what everyone expected. That's what was safe. But something stirred inside him, a flicker of recognition, of shared pain that momentarily burned brighter than his fear. Before he could reconsider, Ethan found himself stepping forward, his worn sneakers squeaking against the floor. "Leave him alone, Tyler." The words came out steadier than Ethan expected, cutting through the hallway noise. The sudden silence was deafening. Tyler turned slowly, eyebrows raised in genuine surprise that quickly morphed into delighted malice. "Well, look who found his voice." Tyler's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Parker decides to play hero. Didn't think you had it in you?" Ethan's mouth went dry. His heartbeat pounded in his ears as Tyler took a step toward him, abandoning his original prey. Students around them shifted, scenting the possibility of confrontation like blood in water. "I said leave him alone." Ethan's voice was quieter this time, but he forced himself to hold Tyler's gaze. Every instinct screamed at him to look away, to apologize, to run. Tyler was close enough now that Ethan could smell his expensive cologne. "Or what, Parker? What exactly are you going to do about it?" The question hung in the air. Ethan had no answer. He wasn't a fighter. His lanky frame and quiet demeanor had never suggested physical threat. He had nothing to offer except the stubborn decision not to back down. "He's got a point," came another voice, the new kid's. He'd gathered his scattered papers and stood straight now, his initial fear replaced by something steelier. "What exactly are you trying to prove here? That you can push people around because your dad's the football coach? Pretty pathetic resume." Tyler's face flushed dark red. The new student had found the most vulnerable spot with unsettling precision. Tyler's complicated relationship with his father, who was indeed Westlake's notoriously demanding football coach. "You don't know anything about me," Tyler snarled, attention swinging back to the new kid. "I know enough." The new student stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Ethan now. "And I'm bored already. Aren't you late for some remedial class?" A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. Tyler's hands clenched into fists, but the warning bell chose that moment to ring, and a teacher emerged from a nearby classroom, instantly dispersing the tension. "Get to class, all of you." "Mr. Bennett called out sharply. The crowd reluctantly began to scatter. Tyler gave Ethan a look that promised this wasn't over before stalking away, his friends trailing behind him. When the hallway had cleared, Ethan released a shaky breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His knees felt watery, adrenaline still coursing through him. "Thanks for that," the new kid said, adjusting his messenger bag strap. "I'm Daniel. Daniel Chen. Ethan Parker." He accepted Daniel's extended hand, noticing the expensive watch on his wrist. And it was nothing. Tyler's. Tyler. "Well, it wasn't nothing to me." Daniel's smile was genuine, revealing a slight gap between his front teeth that somehow made him look more approachable. First day at a new school is hard enough without dealing with cavemen who peaked in middle school. Ethan found himself smiling back, the tension draining from his shoulders. You handled yourself pretty well, actually. Years of practice. Something flickered in Daniel's eyes. A shadow of old pain quickly masked. I've been the new kid more times than I can count. The late bell rang, sharp and insistent. What's your first class? Ethan asked. Daniel glanced down at his crumpled schedule. A P Physics with Sharma. Me too. Come on, I'll show you where it is. As they hurried down the emptying hallway, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. Some invisible turning point had been crossed. He had no way of knowing how right he was. By lunchtime, rumors about the new kid had spread through Westlake High like wildfire. Daniel Chen was the son of tech entrepreneur James Chen, who had recently relocated his company headquarters to their small city. The same James Chen, whose foundation had donated millions to universities and whose name appeared in business magazines with regularity. Ethan heard the whispers as he entered the cafeteria, clutching his worn brown lunch bag. He scanned the room out of habit, looking for his usual solitary corner table. Ethan, over here! Daniel's voice cut through the cafeteria noise. He was sitting alone at a table near the window, waving Ethan over with enthusiasm that seemed out of place in the carefully curated coolness of high school. Ethan hesitated, feeling eyes on him as he crossed the room. Sitting with Daniel meant visibility, the opposite of everything he'd worked for these past years. Haha, hey, he said, sliding onto the bench across from Daniel. How's your first day going? Better now. Daniel pushed aside his tray of barely touched cafeteria food. Is it just me, or does that meatloaf look suspiciously gray? That's its natural color here, Ethan replied, unpacking his simple sandwich. One of Westlake's many charms. Daniel laughed, and Ethan was struck by how easily it came to him. As if laughter was his default state, rather than something to be rationed out carefully. So, Daniel said, leaning forward conspiratorially, I've been hearing things about myself all morning. Apparently, I own 3 Lamborghinis, have a private jet, and my dad built our house out of solid gold. Ethan winced. Small town. News travels fast, especially when it's mostly fiction. The part about my dad's company is true, though, Daniel admitted, absently spinning his water bottle cap on the table. He did move his tech firm here, but the rest, he shrugged. We're just normal. Well, normal-ish. There was something refreshing about Daniel's straightforwardness. No pretense, no careful positioning in the social hierarchy. Why Westlake? Ethan asked. I mean, your family could probably afford any private school. Daniel's expression shifted subtly. My dad believes in public education. Says it keeps me grounded. He hesitated. And after what happened at my last school, I needed a fresh start. Before Ethan could ask what he meant, a shadow fell across their table. Tyler Reed stood there, flanked by 2 of his basketball teammates. But instead of the aggression from that morning, his face wore a calculated smile. Daniel Chen, right? Tyler's voice had transformed to something almost friendly. Heard you just moved here. I'm Tyler Reed. He extended his hand as if the morning's confrontation had never happened. Daniel stared at the offered hand for a beat too long before shaking it briefly. I remember. Yeah, about this morning. Just a misunderstanding. Thought you might want to sit with us. Tyler gestured toward the table in the center of the cafeteria, where the basketball team and cheerleaders presided over the social hierarchy of Westlake. We could show you around, introduce you to everyone worth knowing. The implication was clear in the dismissive glance Tyler threw at Ethan. Daniel took a bite of his apple, chewing thoughtfully. Thanks, but I'm good here. Tyler's smile faltered. You sure? No offense, but Parker here isn't exactly going to help your social standing. Weirdly enough, I don't actually care about my social standing, Daniel replied, making air quotes. But thanks for your concern. The cafeteria had grown quieter, neighboring tables tuning into the exchange. Tyler's jaw tightened, clearly unaccustomed to rejection. Your choice, he said finally. Offer stands if you change your mind. When Tyler walked away, Daniel turned back to Ethan with a wry smile. Does he come with subtitles? Because I'm pretty sure what he actually said was, I've discovered you might be useful to me, so I'm temporarily suspending my asshole behavior. A startled laugh escaped Ethan. That's pretty accurate, actually. I've met 100 Tylers at a dozen different schools, Daniel said, pushing his tray aside. Different names, same script. Ethan studied Daniel with growing curiosity. Despite his casual manner, there was something guarded in his eyes, a wariness that seemed at odds with his easy smile. You move around a lot? Ethan asked. Every couple of years. Dad's company keeps expanding, and he likes to be hands-on with new locations. Daniel's fingers tapped a restless rhythm on the table. What about you? Lived here your whole life? Ethan nodded. Born and raised. Not much to tell. I doubt that. Daniel's gaze was surprisingly perceptive. Nobody stands up to guys like Tyler without a story. The simple observation hit too close to a truth Ethan rarely acknowledged, even to himself. He was saved from responding by the bell signaling the end of lunch period. As they gathered their things, Daniel asked, "What class do you have next?" "English with Winters." "You?" Daniel checked his schedule. "Same. Guess I'm following you again." Walking together through the crowded hallway, Ethan became acutely aware of the stares and whispers. For years, he'd cultivated invisibility. Head down, quiet movements, nothing to draw attention. Now, walking beside Daniel, he felt exposed in a way that made his skin prickle. "Everyone's staring," he muttered. "Let them." Daniel replied with a shrug. "They'll find something new to obsess over by next week." But Ethan wasn't so sure. There was something about Daniel that naturally drew attention. Not just his rumored wealth or new kid status, but a quiet confidence that Ethan both envied and admired. As they entered the English classroom, Mrs. Winters looked up from her desk. "Ah, Mr. Chen. Welcome to Westlake. You can take the empty seat next to Mr. Parker since you two seem acquainted." The classroom was arranged in pairs of desks, and the only empty one happened to be beside Ethan's usual spot by the window. As they settled in, Ethan couldn't help wondering if this strange new friendship was just a temporary alignment, the bullied kid and the new student finding brief common ground, or something that might actually last. Daniel pulled out a weathered copy of The Great Gatsby. From his bag, the edges soft from frequent handling. Noticing Ethan's glance, he smiled. "Third time reading it. Different school, same curriculum. You actually like it?" Ethan asked, surprised. Most students complained about Fitzgerald's prose. "I like that everyone's pretending to be something they're not," Daniel replied, his voice dropping as Mrs. Winters began taking attendance. "Feels familiar, you know." There was something in Daniel's tone, a hint of sadness or resignation, that made Ethan wonder just what kind of fresh start he was really looking for at Westlake High. By Friday of that first week, it seemed as if Daniel Chen had always been at Westlake. He moved through the social landscape with ease, exchanging greetings with students from every clique, while somehow avoiding being claimed by any single group. And inexplicably, he continued to seek out Ethan's company. "What are you doing this weekend?" Daniel asked as they walked to the parking lot after school, his breath visible in the crisp October air. Ethan shrugged. "Homework. Maybe help my mom with some yard work." His weekends had followed the same quiet pattern for years, the rhythm of a life carefully constructed to avoid disappointment. "Want to come over tomorrow? I got the new Orbital Siege game, and my dad's out of town at some conference." Daniel pulled his keys from his pocket, not for a Lamborghini, as rumors suggested, but for a sensible dark blue Volvo. The invitation caught Ethan off guard. In 3 years at Westlake, he'd never been to a classmate's house. "Sure," he found himself saying. "I'd like that." Daniel's face lit up. "Great. Here." He pulled out his phone. "Put in your number. I'll text you the address." As Ethan typed his contact information into Daniel's phone, he felt a strange lightness in his chest, the unfamiliar sensation of being wanted. "See you tomorrow then, around noon?" Daniel said, sliding into his car. "Yeah, tomorrow." Ethan waved as Daniel pulled away, then turned toward the bus stop, trying to ignore the flutter of anxiety in his stomach. The Chen house, as it turned out, was nothing like the mansion of local gossip. It was certainly large, a modern home in a new development on the edge of town, but not ostentatious. What struck Ethan most as he approached the front door was how empty it felt. No personal touches in the pristine front yard, no decorations on the porch, just clean lines and perfect landscaping that spoke more of a model home than a lived-in space. Daniel answered the door in sweatpants and a faded MIT t-shirt, his hair sticking up at odd angles. "You made it. Come in, I just made nachos." The interior was spacious and minimally furnished, with moving boxes still stacked in corners of the living room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a small lake behind the property, filling the space with natural light. "Nice place," Ethan said, following Daniel through the open-concept main floor. "It's okay. Kind of echoes when no one's home." Daniel led him downstairs to a finished basement that had been converted into a media room, complete with an enormous television and gaming setup. "Dad lets me take over down here. Says it contains the chaos." Unlike the rest of the house, this room felt lived in. Posters for indie bands Ethan had never heard of covered one wall. Books and comics were stacked haphazardly on shelves. A guitar leaned in one corner. You play? Ethan asked, nodding toward the instrument. Badly. Daniel grinned, handing Ethan a controller. Another hobby that didn't stick? I'm better at button mashing than chord strumming. They settled into oversized beanbag chairs, and Daniel navigated to the game menu. As the opening sequence played, Ethan found himself relaxing. This wasn't so different from playing games alone in his room, just less lonely. Fair warning, Daniel said through a mouthful of nachos. I'm unreasonably competitive about this game. Bring it on, Ethan replied with more confidence than he felt. 3 hours and countless virtual battles later, they were evenly matched. Daniel threw his controller down in mock outrage after Ethan's character landed a decisive final blow. Betrayal. You said you'd never played this before. I haven't. Ethan laughed. But I've played similar games. The mechanics aren't that different. Daniel shook his head in exaggerated disappointment. And here I thought I'd found someone I could consistently beat. Sorry to disappoint. Actually, Daniel's expression grew more serious. It's nice. Most people either let me win because they think that's what I want, or they get weird when I beat them. Why would people let you win? Daniel hesitated, picking at a loose thread on his sweatpants. Because of my dad, I guess. People act different when they know who he is. Like they're auditioning for something. That sounds exhausting, Ethan said quietly. It is. Daniel met his eyes. That's why I like you. You didn't change when you found out. The simple honesty of the statement caught Ethan off guard. I don't even know what your dad does exactly. Daniel's eyebrows shot up. Seriously? You haven't Googled him or anything? Ethan shrugged, slightly embarrassed. Should I have? No. Daniel's smile returned, brighter than before. God, no. It's just unusual. He leaned back in his beanbag. He founded Parallax Tech. They make specialized software for medical imaging. Not exactly exciting dinner conversation, but it pays the bills. Is it just you and your dad? Ethan asked, noticing the absence of family photos among the posters and memorabilia. Daniel's expression shuddered slightly. Yeah, my mom died when I was 8. To cancer. I'm sorry, Ethan said, the words feeling wholly inadequate. It's okay. It was a long time ago. Daniel gestured vaguely at the room around them. That's part of why we move so much. Dad throws himself into work, opens new offices, and we start over somewhere else. Rinse and repeat. There was resignation in his voice that Ethan recognized. The tone of someone who had learned to accept circumstances beyond their control. My dad left when I was 10. Ethan found himself saying, just packed up and moved to Arizona with his girlfriend. Calls on birthdays sometimes. The words hung between them, an unexpected offering of reciprocal vulnerability. Daniel nodded, no pity in his expression, just understanding. Fathers, huh? Yeah. A comfortable silence settled between them as the game's menu music looped softly in the background. Want to order pizza? Daniel asked finally. I'm starving, and we've demolished the nachos. Definitely. As Daniel called in their order, Ethan glanced around the room, taking in the little details that made this space distinctly Daniel's. A telescope by the window, a half-finished model of what looked like a Mars rover, science fiction novels mixed with classics and graphic novels on the shelves. He noticed a framed photograph partially hidden behind a stack of books. Daniel as a younger boy, maybe 9 or 10, sitting on the shoulders of a woman with the same dark hair and gap-toothed smile. His mother, Ethan realized, feeling like he'd glimpsed something deeply private. Pizza will be here in 30, Daniel announced, returning to his beanbag. What should we play next? Actually, can I ask you something? Ethan said, the question that had been nagging at him all week finally surfacing. Sure. Why did you keep hanging out with me this week? You could have sat with anyone after that first day. Daniel looked genuinely puzzled. Why wouldn't I? Because I'm not exactly popular. Ethan forced the words out. You had offers from every table in the cafeteria by Tuesday. Is that what you think this is about? Social climbing? There was no anger in Daniel's voice, just curiosity. No, Ethan struggled to articulate the confusion he'd felt all week. I don't understand what you get out of being friends with me. Daniel studied him for a long moment. You know what I liked about you from the start? You stood up for me when you had nothing to gain from it. Do you know how rare that is? Ethan shook his head, uncomfortable with the implied praise. Most people I meet want something, Daniel continued. They want to be friends with James Chen's son, not with Daniel. But you, he smiled, you didn't even know who my dad was. You just saw someone having a crappy first day and decided to help. Anyone would have done that, Ethan muttered. But they didn't. You did. Daniel leaned forward. And then you treated me like a normal person, not a walking bank account or status symbol. Do you have any idea how refreshing that is? Ethan hadn't considered it from that perspective, that his own isolation might be precisely what Daniel valued. So no, Daniel concluded, I don't get anything from being friends with you except, an actual friend. Is that okay with you? The question was asked lightly, but Ethan heard the genuine concern beneath it. Yeah, he said finally. That's okay with me. Daniel's smile returned. Good. Now can we please go back to me trying to reclaim my honor after that shameful defeat? As they returned to their game, Ethan felt something shift inside him, a door opening to a possibility he hadn't allowed himself to consider. That friendship didn't have to be complicated or conditional. That maybe, just maybe, he was worthy of it, simply for who he was. The first signs of trouble appeared the following Wednesday. Ethan was at his locker between classes when he overheard a snippet of conversation from a group of girls nearby. Can't believe Chen is still hanging out with that nobody. Maybe it's charity work. His dad's foundation probably gives him community service points or something. Muffled laughter followed, cutting off abruptly when they noticed Ethan listening. He slammed his locker harder than necessary and walked away, the familiar cold weight of shame settling in his stomach. Their friendship had been drawing attention, and not all of it positive. Most of the popular crowd had initially attempted to court Daniel's favor, but his continued association with Ethan had confused the social order of Westlake. If they couldn't have Daniel, they seemed determined to undermine the friendship that excluded them. The whispers followed Ethan through his morning classes, amplified by his heightened awareness. By lunchtime, his resolve to act normal was wearing thin. You okay? Daniel asked as they sat at their usual table. You've been quiet all morning. I'm fine, Ethan replied automatically, unwrapping his sandwich without enthusiasm. Daniel studied him, unconvinced. Is it about the physics test? Because seriously, no one was ready for that. Ethan shook his head. It's not the test. Then what? Ethan hesitated, torn between honesty and the fear of appearing pathetic. People are talking, he finally said, about why you're friends with me. Understanding dawned on Daniel's face. Ah, the charity case theory. Ethan's head snapped up. You've heard it too? I've heard variations of it at every school I've ever attended, Daniel said with a shrug. It's unoriginal, predictable, and completely stupid. The casual dismissal should have been reassuring, but instead it heightened Ethan's anxiety. Doesn't it bother you? What people think? Daniel took a bite of his apple, considering. It used to. A lot, actually. I spent my freshman year at a boarding school in Connecticut, trying so hard to fit in that I lost track of who I was. Made myself miserable trying to please people who were never going to be satisfied. There was a story there, Ethan sensed, something deeper than Daniel was revealing. The thing is, Daniel continued, people will always have opinions about you based on the tiniest fraction of information. They see 10% of your life and fill in the other 90 with whatever story makes sense to them. So you just ignore it? Not exactly. I acknowledge it exists, but I don't give it power over my choices. Daniel set down his apple, his expression unusually serious. If I started avoiding you because of what people might think, what would that say about me? Put that way, it seems simple. But Ethan had spent years carefully navigating the treacherous waters of high school social dynamics, making himself small to avoid attention. Friendship with Daniel had thrust him back into visibility, and he wasn't sure he was ready for the scrutiny. I just don't want to cause problems for you, Ethan said finally. Daniel's face softened. You're not causing problems, you're solving them. Do you know how many fake friends I've had? People who laughed at my jokes because they thought I could get them something? It's exhausting. Before Ethan could respond, a shadow fell across their table. Tyler Reed stood there, his expression unreadable. Chen, he nodded at Daniel, then, with visible reluctance, Parker. Reed. Daniel replied evenly. What can we do for you? Party at my place Saturday. Parents are out of town. Tyler handed Daniel a folded piece of paper. Address is on there. Start time's 8. Daniel accepted the invitation with raised eyebrows. Thanks. Tyler hesitated, clearly struggling with something. Finally, with a grimace like the words physically pained him, he added, Parker can come too if he wants. The reluctant invitation hung in the air between them. Ethan was too stunned to respond. We'll think about it, Daniel said smoothly. Tyler nodded once and walked away, his social duty discharged. Did that just happen? Ethan asked when Tyler was out of earshot. The reluctant pity invite? Yeah, it did. Daniel unfolded the paper, glancing at the address before tucking it into his pocket. Classic power move. Now, if we don't show up, we're the ones rejecting him. We're not actually going, are we? Daniel studied him. Do you want to? God, no. The thought of navigating a party at Tyler's house made Ethan's stomach clench. Those parties are just excuses for the basketball team to get drunk and do stupid things while everyone else stands around pretending to have fun. Sounds like every high school party ever, Daniel said with a laugh. But we can skip it. No big deal. Ethan felt a rush of relief, followed quickly by guilt. You should go if you want to. Don't skip it because of me. I'm not skipping it because of you. I'm skipping it because I'd rather hang out with one person I actually like than 20 people I barely know. Daniel's tone was matter of fact. Besides, the new season of that zombie show we've been watching drops this weekend. Much better use of time. The simple loyalty in Daniel's words warmed something in Ethan's chest. For the first time, he fully believed that their friendship wasn't a temporary arrangement or a charity project. It was real. Zombies definitely beat keg stands. He agreed, a genuine smile replacing his earlier tension. That's the spirit. Daniel grinned. Now, can we please talk about how Mr. Sharma's mustache looked exactly like a caterpillar during that physics test? I couldn't focus because I kept expecting it to inch across his face. Ethan laughed, the weight of the morning's whispers lifting from his shoulders. The day of the homecoming dance arrived with a flurry of excitement throughout Westlake High. For most students, it was a highlight of the fall semester. A night of carefully coordinated outfits, awkward photos, and the potential for social triumph or disaster. For Ethan, it had always been just another Saturday night spent at home. He'd never attended a school dance, had never seen the point in subjecting himself to hours of discomfort just to stand awkwardly on the sidelines. You're really not going? Daniel asked as they walked to the parking lot after school on Friday. 2 months into their friendship, they'd fallen into comfortable routines. Fridays usually meant video games or movies at Daniel's house, a tradition Ethan had come to look forward to all week. Never have before, Ethan replied with a shrug. Not really my scene. Daniel studied him for a moment. Have you ever considered that it might be your scene, but you've never given it a chance? Trust me, I know my scenes. Dark movie theaters where no one talks to me. Great scene. Crowded gym full of people who've ignored me for years, pretending we're one big happy school family. Hard pass. Daniel laughed, but there was something contemplative in his expression. Fair enough. Just seems like a high school experience you might want to have at least once. What about you? Ethan asked, deflecting attention from himself. Aren't you going? Hadn't planned on it. Daniel unlocked his car, tossing his backpack onto the back seat. Though I have been asked by 3 different people this week. Of course you have, Ethan said, unsurprised. Despite Daniel's continued refusal to engage with Westlake's social politics, his popularity had only grown. There was something about his easy confidence and genuine kindness that drew people to him, even as he kept most at arm's length. I told them all the same thing. I already had plans. Daniel gave Ethan a meaningful look. With me, Ethan realized, Daniel, you don't have to skip the dance because of me. If you want to go, I don't. Daniel interrupted. Not if you're not there. Where's the fun in that? A familiar warmth spread through Ethan's chest, the feeling that still surprised him after months of friendship. Being chosen, being wanted, being someone's priority. So zombie movie marathon tomorrow night? He asked. Actually, Daniel hesitated. I was thinking we could try something different. Different how? Homecoming adjacent, Daniel said with a grin that immediately made Ethan suspicious. Just hear me out. What if we go do our own thing? Dinner at that diner you like, maybe, and then crash the after party at Lakeside Park. Everyone goes there after the dance anyway. We could just show up later, no actual dance required. Ethan frowned. Well, in a way, why would we want to do that? Because, Daniel said patiently, it might be fun to occasionally interact with humans other than each other and our parents. And before you say it, he held up a hand to stop Ethan's protest. I know most people at school are shallow and fake, but not everyone is. And we're only young and stupid once, right? There was something in Daniel's tone, a wistfulness that Ethan had noticed occasionally, as if he were trying to pack in experiences before they slipped away. 1 hour, Ethan found himself saying. We go for 1 hour, and if it sucks, we bail and go back to your place for zombies. Daniel's face lit up. Deal! I'll pick you up at 7 for dinner. As Ethan watched Daniel drive away, he wondered what he'd just agreed to. In 2 months of friendship, he'd found himself saying yes to things he would have automatically rejected before. hiking trails on weekends, trying sushi for the first time, joining Daniel for volunteer work at the local animal shelter. Each experience had pushed him slightly beyond his comfort zone, and to his surprise, he'd enjoyed most of them. But a party with the entire junior and senior classes? That was a significantly bigger stretch. The next evening, after a dinner of burgers and shakes at Ethan's favorite local diner, they sat in Daniel's car in the parking lot of Lakeside Park. Music and laughter drifted from the pavilion area, where strings of lights had been hung between trees. Groups of students in formal wear milled around, some dancing to music playing from portable speakers, others gathering in clusters near parked cars. "We can still bail," Daniel offered, watching Ethan's tense posture. "Zombie apocalypse is always on the table." Ethan took a deep breath. "No, let's do this. 1 hour like we agreed." They stepped out of the car into the cool October night. Ethan felt immediately self-conscious in his jeans and hoodie, but Daniel had insisted they dress normally. "If we're not doing the dance, we're not doing awkward formal wear," he'd declared. As they approached the gathering, Ethan braced himself for stares or comments. To his surprise, their arrival barely registered. Most people were too caught up in their own conversations or dancing to notice 2 more additions to the crowd. "See? Not so bad," Daniel said, nudging Ethan's shoulder. "Want something to drink? I think I saw a cooler over there." They navigated through the crowd, accepting cans of soda from a table set up near the pavilion. Ethan recognized most faces, though he rarely spoke to any of them. It was strange seeing his classmates outside the rigid social structure of school, couples from different cliques dancing together, students who never acknowledged each other in hallways now laughing in mixed groups. "Daniel, you made it." A girl from their English class approached, her homecoming dress slightly rumpled from dancing. "We were taking bets on whether you'd show. Couldn't miss all the excitement," Daniel replied easily. "Great dress, Mia." "Thanks." She turned to include Ethan in her smile. "Hey, Ethan. Didn't expect to see you here." There was no malice in her tone, just genuine surprise. Ethan managed a small smile in return. "Yeah, me neither." "Well, I'm glad you both came. A bunch of us are heading down to the dock in a bit to look at stars. You should join if you want." With a wave, she disappeared back into the crowd. "See?" Daniel said. "Perfectly civil human interaction." Ethan had to admit it wasn't as uncomfortable as he'd feared. They found a spot at the edge of the pavilion where they could observe without being in the center of activity. Daniel seemed content to people watch alongside Ethan, rather than diving into the social whirl as he easily could have. "Surprised Reed actually decorated this place decently," Daniel commented, looking up at the lights strung overhead. "Maybe there's hope for him yet." "The student council did this," Ethan corrected. "Tyler just shows up and takes credit." Daniel laughed. "Sounds about right." As if summoned by the mention of his name, Tyler Reed appeared at the edge of the pavilion, surrounded by his usual entourage. His tie was loosened and he swayed slightly, evidence of something stronger than the sodas being officially served. Ethan tensed automatically. Though Tyler had mostly ignored him since that first confrontation with Daniel, old instincts died hard. "Relax," Daniel murmured. "He's not going to start anything here." But Tyler had spotted them. His eyes narrowed, focusing with visible effort as he detached himself from his friends and made his way over. "Chen," he greeted, voice slightly slurred. "Didn't think school dances were your scene?" "We skipped the dance," Daniel replied easily. "Just checking out the after party." Tyler's gaze shifted to Ethan, a smirk forming. "Still following him around like a lost puppy, Parker?" The familiar rush of shame and anger tightened Ethan's chest. Before he could respond, Daniel stepped slightly forward. "We actually came together," he said, his tone still casual but with an edge beneath it. "Friends do that, you know. Might be a foreign concept." Tyler's jaw tightened. For a moment, Ethan thought he might lash out, but instead he gave a dismissive laugh. "Whatever. Enjoy slumming it, Chen." He turned and walked unsteadily back toward his friends. "Charming as ever," Daniel muttered. "You okay?" Ethan nodded, though the encounter had left him unsettled. "Maybe we should head out." "Don't let him ruin the night," Daniel said. "We still have," he checked his watch, 27 minutes of our hour left. Despite Daniel's attempt at lightness, Ethan could see his friend was annoyed. It was one of the things he'd come to appreciate most about Daniel, how personally he took any slight against Ethan, even as he shrugged off those directed at himself. "You know what?" "You're right." Ethan straightened his shoulders. "Let's go check out that dock Mia mentioned." Daniel's smile returned. "Now you're talking?" They were making their way through the crowd when a commotion erupted near the parking area. Raised voices carried across the park, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Wait, Wonder, what's going on? Ethan asked, straining to see past the gathering crowd. Let's find out, Daniel replied, already moving toward the disturbance. They pushed their way to the edge of the circle that had formed around two figures. Tyler stood swaying, face flushed with anger, facing a smaller boy Ethan recognized as Alex Hernandez, a sophomore who worked on the school newspaper. Shattered glass glittered on the pavement between them, the remains of what had been a camera. I told you, no pictures, Tyler shouted, his words running together. Who do you think you are? Alex stood his ground despite being significantly smaller than Tyler. It's for the school paper. I'm covering homecoming. You're covering nothing now, Tyler sneered, gesturing at the broken camera. Next time, listen when someone tells you no. That was school equipment, Alex said, his voice shaking with anger. I'm responsible for it. Not my problem. Tyler turned to walk away, nearly stumbling. Hey, Daniel called out, stepping into the circle. You can't just break someone's camera and walk away. Tyler spun back around, his expression darkening when he saw who had spoken. Stay out of this, Chen. Not your business. You made it my business when you decided to be a jerk in public. Daniel replied, his usual easygoing tone replaced by something harder. You owe him for the camera. The crowd had grown silent, watching the confrontation with the rapt attention of people witnessing potential disaster. Tyler laughed, a harsh sound without humor. I don't owe anybody anything, and you need to learn your place around here. My place? Daniel raised his eyebrows. What is this, a bad 80s movie? Next, you'll be telling me to meet you at the quarry at dawn. A few nervous laughs rippled through the onlookers. Tyler's face flushed darker. You think you're so special because your dad has money? Tyler took a step closer to Daniel. Newsflash, nobody cares. You're just the flavor of the month around here. Ethan watched the exchange with growing unease. He'd seen Tyler in this mood before, belligerent, looking for an outlet for whatever was eating at him. It never ended well for whoever was in his path. Tyler, back off, came a new voice. Mia pushed through the crowd to stand beside Daniel. You're drunk. Go sleep it off. Oh, look, another fan of the rich boy. Tyler spat. Get in line, Mia. This isn't about Daniel. She fired back. It's about you being a jerk and breaking school property. Again! The camera was an accident, Tyler insisted, though no one appeared convinced. Then you shouldn't have a problem paying for it, Daniel said reasonably. Tyler's restraint finally snapped. He shoved Daniel hard, sending him stumbling backward. I said, mind your own business. Daniel regained his balance quickly, hands raised in a placating gesture. I'm not looking for a fight, Tyler. Too bad. You found one. Tyler lunged forward, swinging wildly. Daniel sidestepped the clumsy punch, causing Tyler to stumble forward with his own momentum. Before the situation could escalate further, Ethan found himself stepping between them. Stop it, he shouted, surprised by the authority in his own voice. This is stupid. Tyler froze, momentarily thrown by Ethan's intervention. Seriously, Parker? You're stepping up now? Yes, Ethan said simply, standing his ground even as his heart hammered. This has gone far enough. For a long moment, Tyler stared at him, swaying slightly. Something shifted in his expression, confusion, maybe even a grudging respect. Then his friends were there, pulling him back. Come on, man, it's not worth it. One of them muttered. Let's get out of here before someone calls the cops. The tension in the air slowly dissipated as Tyler allowed himself to be led away, shooting one last glare over his shoulder. As the crowd began to break up, Daniel turned to Alex. You okay? The sophomore nodded, kneeling to carefully gather the broken pieces of the camera. I should have known better than to try getting pictures of Tyler. He was drinking behind the gym during the dance too. Not your fault, Mia said firmly. He's responsible for his own actions. I'll help you explain to the newspaper advisor, Daniel offered, and I can chip in for a replacement if the school won't cover it. You don't have to do that, Alex said quickly. I know I don't have to. I want to. As Daniel and Mia helped Alex collect the broken camera pieces, Ethan stood back, processing what had just happened. He had stepped between Tyler Reed and a fight, something that would have been unthinkable just months ago. That was brave, Daniel said quietly when he rejoined Ethan. Stepping in like that, Ethan shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. It was stupid. Tyler could have taken a swing at me instead, but he didn't. Daniel studied him with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. You know what I think? I think even Tyler Reed knows better than to mess with someone who stands up for what's right. The simple faith in Daniel's words warmed something deep inside Ethan, a small ember of confidence that had been quietly growing over the past months. Our hour's definitely up, he said, checking his phone. Zombies now? Absolutely, Daniel agreed with a grin. I think we've had enough real-life drama for one night. As they walked back to Daniel's car, Ethan realized something surprising. Despite the confrontation with Tyler, despite the stress and the public nature of it all, he didn't regret coming. For the first time, he'd faced a social situation outside his comfort zone and emerged feeling stronger rather than depleted. And that, he thought as Daniel drove them away from the park, was worth more than 100 peaceful nights at home alone. Word of the confrontation at the homecoming after-party spread through Westlake High like wildfire. By Monday morning, the story had evolved into something mythic. Depending on who was telling it, either Tyler had nearly beaten Daniel to a pulp, or Daniel had humiliated Tyler with martial arts moves no one had previously suspected he possessed. The truth, as Ethan knew, was far less dramatic. But one detail remained consistent across all versions. Ethan Parker had stepped between them, facing down Tyler Reed without flinching. Apparently I'm a ninja now, Daniel commented as they walked to first period, amused by the whispers that followed them. And you're my brave sidekick. Great, Ethan groaned. Just what I wanted, more attention. But the attention was different this time. Students who had never acknowledged Ethan's existence now nodded to him in hallways or included him in conversations. Teachers who had always seen him as the quiet kid in the back row suddenly called on him more often, as if expecting new confidence. Most surprising of all was Tyler's reaction. Rather than escalating the conflict as Ethan had feared, Tyler seemed to be avoiding both of them entirely. When forced to interact in shared classes, he was coldly civil, a vast improvement over his previous behavior. I think you actually scared him, Daniel observed after Tyler mumbled an approximation of, "Excuse me," when he bumped into Ethan in the cafeteria line. Me? Scary, Ethan laughed at the absurdity. Not physically, Daniel clarified, but you stood up to him when he was being a jerk. Twice now. That's not in his playbook. People like Tyler expect everyone to either join in or look away. There was truth in Daniel's assessment. Ethan had spent years looking away, making himself invisible to avoid becoming a target. Standing up first for Daniel, then against Tyler's bullying of Alex, had changed something fundamental in how others perceived him, and perhaps more importantly, in how he perceived himself. As November turned to December, Ethan found himself slowly emerging from the protective shell he'd built over years of social isolation. He joined Daniel for more school events, spoke up more in classes, even agreed to help with the winter food drive that Daniel had enthusiastically volunteered them for. Remind me again why we're spending Saturday sorting canned goods? Ethan asked as they carried boxes into the school gymnasium, which had been transformed into a collection center for the annual charity effort. Because it's good for the soul, Daniel replied cheerfully. And because Mrs. Winters is giving extra credit for volunteer hours, and you said, and I quote, "My essay grade could use some divine intervention." I regret my life choices, Ethan muttered, though without real annoyance. The truth was, he didn't mind the volunteer work. It gave him something meaningful to focus on outside of schoolwork and his limited home life. They spent the morning organizing donations alongside other student volunteers, including Mia and several members of the student council. The easy camaraderie of shared work made conversation flow naturally, and Ethan found himself laughing and joking with classmates he'd barely spoken to before. During a break, Mia approached their table with bottles of water. "You guys are officially the heroes of the food drive," she announced. "We've never sorted this efficiently before." "All Daniel," Ethan said. He created the categorization system, and Ethan implemented it perfectly. Daniel countered. "Team effort." Mia looked between them with a thoughtful expression. "You know, you two have really changed things around here." What do you mean?" Ethan asked. Just the social atmosphere. It's different." She took a sip of her water. "Tyler's group used to run everything, and everyone just accepted it. But ever since you stood up to them, it's like people realized they could choose not to play along." Ethan hadn't noticed the shift, but as Mia pointed it out, he recognized the truth in her words. The rigid social hierarchy that had defined his first 3 years at Westlake had begun to fracture, with students increasingly crossing the invisible boundaries between groups. "I hadn't thought about it that way," he admitted. "Well, I have," Mia said firmly. "And it's better now. So thank you." As she walked away to check on another volunteer station, Daniel gave Ethan a gentle elbow to the ribs. "See? Changing the world one canned good at a time." Ethan rolled his eyes, but secretly, he felt a warm glow of pride. For the first time in his high school career, he felt like he was making a positive mark on Westlake rather than just trying to survive it. The final week before winter break brought a flurry of activity, last-minute tests, holiday preparations, and the annual Winter Arts Showcase, where students displayed projects from various creative classes. Daniel had convinced Ethan to submit a photograph he'd taken during one of their weekend hikes, a simple shot of morning light filtering through bare trees that Ethan thought unremarkable, but Daniel had insisted was exactly the kind of thing people hang in fancy galleries. "I still can't believe you talked me into this," Ethan muttered as they walked through the school's main hallway, where artwork had been mounted on portable display walls. "You have an eye for composition," Daniel insisted. "Besides, your mom's coming to see it, right? That's worth any embarrassment." Ethan nodded. His mother had been working double shifts at the hospital for years to support them after his father left, rarely able to attend school events. The fact that she'd rearranged her schedule to come tonight meant everything to him. They found Ethan's photograph, displayed in a prime location near the entrance to the auditorium. Seeing it framed and lit properly, even Ethan had to admit it looked better than he'd expected. "What did I tell you?" Daniel said, admiring the photo. "Gallery material. It's just trees," Ethan demurred. "It's perspective," Daniel corrected. "The way the light comes through, it makes you feel like there's something worth moving toward, even in the winter when everything seems dead." Ethan looked at his friend in surprise. "That's actually exactly what I was thinking when I took it." Daniel grinned. "See? I get you, Parker." As they continued through the exhibition, Ethan noticed a man in an expensive suit studying artwork with intense concentration. Something about his focused expression reminded him of Daniel. "Is that?" he began. Daniel followed his gaze and stiffened slightly. "My dad. I didn't know he was coming." There was a complex mix of emotions in Daniel's voice. Surprise, pleasure, and something like apprehension. In the 4 months of their friendship, Ethan had never met James Chen. The man traveled frequently, and when he was home, he seemed to work long hours. Daniel spoke of him with respect, but a certain distance that Ethan recognized from his own complicated feelings about his absent father. "Do you want to go say hi?" Ethan asked. Daniel hesitated. "I guess we should." As they approached, James Chen looked up, his serious expression warming when he saw his son. "Daniel, I was looking for you." "Dad, hey." Daniel's usual easy confidence had shifted to something more formal. "I didn't know you'd be here tonight. Your photography teacher emailed me about your series. I wanted to see it." James Chen's gaze shifted to Ethan, questioning. "This is Ethan Parker," Daniel said. "My best friend." "Ethan, my dad, James Chen." The simple introduction, "my best friend," sent a warm rush through Ethan. He extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Chen." James Chen's handshake was firm, his assessment direct. "Parker, Daniel's mentioned you. You're in advanced placement classes together?" "Yes, sir. Physics and English." James nodded, his attention already drifting back to Daniel. "Your photographs are impressive. The composition shows real thought." Daniel's face lit up at the praise. "Thanks, Dad. They're part of a series I'm working on about transition and change. Good concept. Strong technical execution." James checked his watch. "I have a conference call with Tokyo in 30 minutes. Will you be home later tonight?" "Yeah, I'm just staying for the choir performance, then heading back." "We'll talk more then." James nodded to Ethan. "Good to meet you, Ethan." As James Chen walked away, Daniel released a breath Ethan hadn't realized he was holding. "So that's your dad," Ethan said. "That's him," Daniel agreed. "Brief but intense as usual. He seems proud of your work." "Yeah." Daniel's smile returned, though smaller than before. In his own way. They continued through the exhibition, eventually making their way to the auditorium for the musical performances. As they found seats, Ethan spotted his mother entering, still in her hospital scrubs. He waved her over, a familiar mix of pride and sadness washing over him at the sight of her exhausted smile. "Mom, you made it," he said as she sat beside him. "Wouldn't miss it, sweetheart." She squeezed his hand. "Did I miss your photograph?" "No, we can see it after the performances." "Mom, this is Daniel." "Daniel, my mom, Sarah Parker." "It's great to meet you, Mrs. Parker," Daniel said with genuine warmth. "Ethan's photograph is amazing. You're going to love it." Sarah Parker's tired eyes crinkled with her smile. "I've heard so much about you, Daniel. It's nice to finally put a face to the name." As the lights dimmed for the first performance, Ethan glanced between his mother and his friend. Something tight in his chest eased at seeing them together, these two essential parts of his world finally connecting. The choir sang traditional winter songs, followed by the jazz band's lively performance. Throughout the show, Ethan found himself fully present in a way he rarely was at school events, not counting minutes until escape, but actually enjoying the moment. "Your school has some real talent," his mother commented during intermission, "and it's so much nicer than when I was in high school." All these different types of students working together. Ethan followed her gaze to where the next performers were setting up. A diverse group that included students from across Westlake's social spectrum. Even a few months ago, such collaboration would have been unusual. "Things are changing," he said, echoing Mia's earlier observation. Daniel nudged his shoulder. "And you're part of making that happen." After the showcase, they showed Sarah Ethan's photograph. Her pride was evident as she studied it, asking about his process and inspiration with genuine interest. "It's beautiful, Ethan," she said finally. "You've always had an eye for finding light in unexpected places." The simple observation struck Ethan as profound. Not just about his photography, but about the person he was becoming. Someone who could find and create light rather than just surviving darkness. As they walked his mother to her car, she pulled Daniel into an unexpected hug. "Thank you for being such a good friend to my son," she said softly. Daniel returned the hug without hesitation. "Easy job. He's pretty great." Driving home from the showcase later that night, Ethan reflected on the strange, winding path that had led him here. From isolated survival to genuine connection, from invisibility to presence. All because he'd made one impulsive decision to stand up for a new student months ago. "Lucky, what are you thinking about?" Daniel asked from the driver's seat, glancing over. "You've got that philosophical look again." "Just how different things are now," Ethan admitted. "From the beginning of the year." Daniel nodded, eyes returning to the road. "Good different?" "Definitely good different." A comfortable silence fell between them, the easy quiet of friendship that didn't need constant filling. As streetlights cast intermittent patterns across the dashboard, Ethan realized he'd captured something in his photograph that he was now experiencing in his life. Light finding its way through what had seemed impenetrable darkness, creating something unexpectedly beautiful. Winter break came and went in a blur of holiday celebrations, lazy days, and frequent hangouts at Daniel's house. James Chen was traveling for most of the break, leaving Daniel alone in the large house that still bore the impersonal feel of a place not fully inhabited. "Doesn't it get lonely?" Ethan asked one evening as they sprawled on the media room couches, the credits of a movie rolling on the screen. Daniel shrugged. "Used to it. Dad's always worked a lot. Besides," he grinned, tossing a piece of popcorn at Ethan. "That's what friends are for, right?" The casual deflection was typical of how Daniel handled any mention of his family situation. For all his openness about most topics, he rarely spoke in depth about his relationship with his father or his feelings about his mother's death. Ethan recognized the defense mechanism. He used similar tactics when conversations turned to his own absent father. The difference, Ethan realized, was that his mother provided the emotional anchor his father had abandoned. Daniel seemed to have no such anchor, just a father who, while clearly caring, remained distant and preoccupied. When school resumed in January, they returned to find Westlake High subtly transformed. The shifts in social dynamics that had begun in the fall had solidified over the break. The cafeteria tables, once rigidly segregated by clique, now featured more mixed groupings. Tyler Reed's influence, while still present, had diminished noticeably. "I've been thinking," Daniel said one afternoon as they worked on physics homework in the school library. "We should start a photography club." Ethan looked up from his equations. "A what?" "Photography club. Your picture in the showcase got a lot of positive feedback. There are probably other students who'd be interested but don't take the actual class." "And what would this club do exactly?" Daniel's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "Weekend photo expeditions, skill workshops, maybe even put together an exhibition at the end of the year, separate from the school showcase." "And you want me to join this hypothetical club?" Ethan asked, already knowing the answer. "Not just join, help me run it." Daniel leaned forward. "Come on, it would be good. Creative outlet, looks great on college applications, and," he grinned, "gives us an excuse to go hiking more often." Ethan considered the idea. 6 months ago, he would have immediately rejected any suggestion that put him in a leadership position. Now the prospect was still intimidating, but not unthinkable. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "That's not a no," Daniel pointed out. "I'll take it." 2 weeks later, the Westlake Photography Club held its first meeting in Mrs. Winter's classroom after school. To Ethan's surprise, 12 students showed up. a mix of experienced photographers and complete beginners, drawn by the flyers Daniel had plastered throughout the school. "Welcome, everyone!" Daniel's natural ease with public speaking was evident as he addressed the group. "Ethan and I are excited to get this club started. The basic idea is to create a space where we can all learn from each other, regardless of experience level." Ethan had agreed to handle the more technical aspects of the presentation, walking students through basic composition principles and camera settings. His initial nervousness faded as he focused on the material, finding unexpected satisfaction in sharing knowledge he'd gathered through years of solitary experimentation. "For our first club expedition," Daniel announced toward the end of the meeting, "we're thinking the nature preserve this Saturday morning. Great light, lots of variety. Sign up on the sheet if you're interested." As students gathered their things and filtered out, making plans for the weekend outing, Mia approached Ethan. "This is really cool," she said. "I've always wanted to learn photography but was too intimidated to take the actual class. You should definitely come Saturday." Ethan found himself saying, "It's perfect for beginners." "I will," she promised with a smile. "Save me a spot in the carpool?" After she left, Daniel gave Ethan a speculative look. "What?" Ethan asked defensively. "Nothing," Daniel said, though his expression suggested otherwise. "Just nice to see you making more connections." The photography club quickly became one of the most active student organizations at Westlake. Their weekend expeditions attracted a growing number of participants, and the hallway outside Mrs. Winter's classroom was soon lined with student work from club members. For Ethan, the club represented something he'd never experienced before, a community built around shared interest rather than social status. Students who would never have interacted in normal school settings found common ground in their enthusiasm for photography, forming unexpected friendships across grade levels and social groups. "The Chen Parker effect strikes again," Mia commented during their February expedition to an abandoned industrial area outside town. "The what?" Ethan asked, adjusting his camera settings. "That's what people are calling it. The way you two keep bringing different groups of students together." She gestured around at the diverse groups scattered across the location, helping each other find interesting angles and lighting. "It started with you guys becoming friends when no one expected it, and now look. The social map of Westlake is completely redrawn." Ethan followed her gaze, seeing what she meant. The senior class president was showing a freshman how to use manual focus. Two students from rival sports teams were comparing shots of the same rusty staircase. Boundaries that had seemed impenetrable months ago now appeared almost meaningless. "I don't think we can take credit for that," he said. "Maybe not intentionally," Mia replied. "But sometimes change just needs a catalyst, you know? Something to show people a different way is possible." Her words stayed with Ethan long after the expedition ended. He'd never thought of himself as someone who could influence others or create change. His goal for years had been simple survival. Get through high school without drawing attention. Graduate, escape. Now, unexpectedly, he found himself not just surviving Westlake, but helping transform it. As winter melted into early spring, college acceptance letters began arriving for seniors. Though Ethan and Daniel were juniors, the process felt suddenly immediate, a preview of decisions they would face the following year. "Have you thought about where you'll apply?" Daniel asked one afternoon as they sprawled on the bleachers by the track, enjoying the first truly warm day of March. Ethan shrugged. "State, probably. It's what I can afford with scholarships." "You could aim higher," Daniel said carefully. "Your grades are excellent, and with your photography developing the way it is, not all of us can apply anywhere we want." Ethan interrupted more sharply than intended. The subject of college always made him acutely aware of the financial gulf between them, a reality he usually managed to ignore. Daniel was quiet for a moment. "I know that," he finally said. "But there are scholarships, financial aid packages. You shouldn't limit yourself without exploring options." "Easy for you to say," Ethan muttered. "Actually, no," Daniel replied, an unusual edge in his voice. "It's not easy for me to say, because I know you'll take it as me being privileged and clueless instead of me being your friend who believes in you." The blunt assessment caught Ethan off guard. Daniel rarely called him out directly, preferring to guide through suggestion rather than confrontation. "I'm sorry," Ethan said after a moment. "You're right. That wasn't fair." Daniel's expression softened. "It's okay. College stuff is stressful for everyone, just in different ways." "Different ways how?" "You can go anywhere you want." "Can I?" Daniel leaned back against the bleacher behind him, eyes fixed on the distant track where runners circled in the afternoon sun. "My dad has very specific ideas about what I should study and where." The Chen family educational path is pretty well established. Ivy League, business focus, eventually joined the company. Ethan studied his friend's profile. Is that not what you want? I don't know what I want, Daniel admitted. That's the problem. Photography, maybe. Environmental science. Something that feels meaningful. But every time I bring up alternatives, Dad redirects to practical considerations and family legacy. It was the most Daniel had ever revealed about tensions with his father. Ethan realized with a pang that he'd been so focused on the obvious advantages of Daniel's situation that he'd missed the pressures that came with it. So what will you do? He asked. Daniel sighed. Probably what I always do. Find some middle ground that keeps the peace without completely giving up what matters to me. He turned to Ethan with a half smile. Family dynamics, right? Always complicated. Always. Ethan agreed, thinking of his own absent father and overworked mother. The point is, Daniel continued, we both have constraints, just different ones. But we also both have options. All I'm saying is, don't rule things out without exploring them first. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but Daniel's words lingered with Ethan. That evening, he found himself researching scholarship opportunities and requirements for schools he'd previously considered out of reach. The exercise felt both terrifying and liberating, acknowledging dreams he'd kept carefully suppressed for years. As March turned to April, another change appeared on Westlake's social landscape. Tyler Reed, whose antagonism had faded to cold distance over the winter, approached Ethan in the parking lot after school. Parker, got a minute? Tyler's expression was uncomfortable, his usual swagger noticeably absent. Ethan tensed automatically. What's up? Look, this is weird for me, so I'm just going to say it. Tyler shifted his weight, eyes darting around the parking lot as if to ensure no one was watching. I was a jerk to you. For years. And to your friend Chen. And to a lot of people. And ... I'm sorry. The apology was so unexpected that Ethan momentarily lost the ability to speak. You don't have to say anything. Tyler continued into the silence. I just wanted you to know. I've been doing some thinking and, yeah, I was wrong. That's it. He turned to leave, but Ethan found his voice. Tyler, wait. Tyler paused, looking back warily. Thank you. Ethan said simply. That couldn't have been easy. A flicker of surprise crossed Tyler's face, followed by what might have been relief. Yeah, well, better late than never, I guess. He hesitated. For what it's worth, I respect what you did. Standing up to me that first day with Chen and at the homecoming party takes guts. With an awkward nod, Tyler walked away, leaving Ethan staring after him in bewilderment. When he recounted the conversation to Daniel later, his friend was equally surprised. Tyler Reed apologized? Voluntarily? Daniel shook his head in disbelief. Maybe the apocalypse is coming after all. He seemed sincere, Ethan said. It was weird, but I think he meant it. Huh? Daniel considered this. People can change, I guess. Even Tyler Reed. Even me, Ethan said quietly. Daniel looked at him with a gentle smile. You didn't change, Ethan. You just finally let people see who you really are. The simple observation struck Ethan as profoundly true. The person he was now, leading the photography club, speaking up in classes, forming new friendships, had always existed beneath the protective shell he'd built. It had just taken someone believing in that person to help him emerge. As spring advanced, bringing with it the final stretch of junior year, Ethan found himself increasingly aware of an approaching crossroads. The photography club was planning a year-end exhibition. College visits would begin over the summer. Decisions about senior classes needed to be made. Through it all ran a current of uncertainty about his friendship with Daniel. They never discussed it directly, but the reality loomed. After senior year, they would likely head in different directions. Daniel to an elite university, following his family's expectations. Ethan to wherever scholarships and financial aid could take him. The thought of returning to his former isolation after experiencing genuine friendship was almost unbearable. Yet Ethan found himself pulling back slightly, unconsciously preparing for the eventual separation. Daniel noticed, of course. You're doing that thing again. He commented one Friday afternoon as they set up for the photography club's exhibition in the school library. What thing? Ethan asked, carefully arranging prints on display boards. That thing where you start putting distance between us because you're worried about something, but won't talk about it. Ethan sighed. After months of friendship, Daniel could read him with uncomfortable accuracy. I've just been thinking about next year, he admitted. And after that, understanding dawned in Daniel's expression. You're worried about college separating us. Aren't you? Ethan countered. It's not like we can guarantee we'll end up at the same school. No, we can't. Daniel agreed. But that doesn't mean we stop being friends. Long-distance friendships fade, Ethan said, voicing the fear that had been growing inside him. People make new connections, get busy with new lives. Some do, Daniel acknowledged, but not the ones that matter. He set down the print he'd been holding and faced Ethan directly. Do you think I'm the kind of person who forgets people who are important to me? Put that way, it did seem unlikely. In the months Ethan had known him, Daniel had demonstrated extraordinary loyalty, not just to Ethan, but to everyone he considered a friend. No, Ethan admitted, but circumstances change people. Sometimes, Daniel agreed. But here's the thing about real friendship, Ethan. It's not dependent on convenience. My dad has a friend from college he still talks to weekly, even though one lives in Singapore and one in London. They haven't lived on the same continent in 20 years. That's different, Ethan argued. They're adults with resources. And we'll be adults with resources too eventually. Daniel pointed out, technology exists, planes exist, summer breaks exist. It won't be the same, Ethan insisted. No, it won't, Daniel conceded, but different doesn't mean worse. It just means we'll have to make more effort. He picked up another photograph, studying it before adding quietly, and you're worth the effort, Ethan. The simple affirmation pierced through Ethan's defenses. In all his worry about the future, he'd been underestimating not just Daniel's commitment, but his own worthiness of that commitment. So are you, he said finally. Daniel smiled, the tension between them dissipating. Then we're agreed. No more preemptive distancing. We deal with whatever comes when it comes together. As they finished setting up the exhibition, Ethan felt something settle inside him. Not the elimination of future uncertainty, but the acceptance that uncertainty didn't have to mean loss. The photography club's exhibition opened that evening to unexpected success. Students, teachers, and parents filled the library, admiring the diverse collection of images captured throughout the year. Ethan's contributions, a series focusing on transformation in natural spaces, drew particular attention. These are remarkable, Mrs. Winters said, studying a photograph of new growth emerging from a burned forest floor. You have a real gift for finding hope in difficult circumstances, Ethan. The observation echoed what his mother had said months earlier at the Winter Showcase. Finding light in unexpected places. Seeing possibility where others might see only devastation. As Ethan moved through the crowded library, accepting congratulations and discussing techniques with visitors, he caught sight of Daniel deep in conversation with his father. James Chen had attended at Daniel's request, and for once appeared to be fully present rather than checking his watch or phone. What struck Ethan most was the animation in Daniel's expression as he explained his photographic process. The pure passion that lit his features when discussing the art form he loved. And more surprisingly, the genuine interest in James Chen's face as he listened to his son. Later, as they packed up the exhibition, Daniel mentioned the conversation casually. Dad actually liked my Urban Decay series. Said it showed unexpected maturity of perspective. High praise, Ethan commented, recognizing the significance of the approval. From him, the highest. Daniel's smile was quieter than usual, tinged with something like hope. He asked about my plans for developing photography skills in college. What did you tell him? The truth, that I'm considering a double major. Business and fine arts or environmental studies? Daniel carefully packed a framed photograph into a protective sleeve. He didn't immediately shut it down. That's progress. Definitely progress, Ethan agreed. As they finished cleaning up, the library empty now except for them, Daniel paused. You know what I realized tonight? What? When I started at Westlake, I was just hoping to get through another year at another school without too much drama. I never expected, he gestured around the room at the remnants of the exhibition they'd created together. All of this. Me neither, Ethan admitted. I was just trying to be invisible until graduation. And now look at us, running clubs, changing social dynamics, being unabashedly visible. The observation captured perfectly the transformation of the past 8 months. From the moment Ethan had stepped forward in that hallway on the first day of school, standing up for a new student he didn't know, everything had changed, not just for him, but for Westlake itself. The Chen Parker effect, Ethan said with a smile, recalling Mia's term. I like the sound of that, Daniel replied. Has a nice ring to it. As they carried the last boxes to Daniel's car, the spring evening warm around them, Ethan reflected on the strange, winding path that had led him here. One impulsive act of courage standing up for a stranger. One unexpected friendship that had changed everything. He could never have anticipated that the new student he defended would become his closest friend, or that together they would create ripples that transformed their entire school. He couldn't have known that the wealthy donor's son would be the person who helped him discover his own worth and potential. But looking back now, it seemed almost inevitable, as if all the pieces had been waiting to fall into place, needing only that first brave step to set everything in motion. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel asked as they drove away from the school. "That sometimes the most important moments in our lives don't announce themselves," Ethan replied. "They just happen, and we only recognize them looking back." Daniel nodded, understanding immediately. Like standing up for a random new kid and accidentally starting a friendship that changes everything? Exactly like that. Daniel smiled, eyes on the road ahead. "Well, for what it's worth, I'm glad you took that stand. Best mistake you ever made?" "It wasn't a mistake," Ethan said quietly. "It was the first right thing I'd done in a long time." As Daniel's car disappeared down the darkening street, the school behind them and the future ahead, Ethan felt a certainty he'd never experienced before. Whatever came next, senior year, college decisions, eventual separation, the connection they'd formed would endure. Not because circumstances would make it easy, but because they would both choose, again and again, to stand up for what mattered most. Just as he had on that first day, never realizing how that single moment of courage would change everything.